Hi guys, welcome to this video, welcome to Inverness, and welcome to this little beastie here. Now before I go into the meat of the video, which as the title suggests is about me, an element of my health, and also about the channel, I'm just going to mention this bird here. This is by Sim720, and as I always do, I always like to introduce the aircraft, because the first thing you generally get after a video is what aircraft is it, where are you, what airfield, what add-ons are you running, etc. I'm not running very many add-ons. I've got FTX ORBX soft clouds. I've got the weather engine active sky next, and then literally this is just Sim720 scenery and Sim720 aircraft. So this is Inverness we're at, and this is, as I say, the Comco Ikarus C42A, which is a bit of a mouthful. This aircraft in real life is a microlight. So I did get the opportunity to speak to Sim720 about this when they initially released it. I was planning on doing a review on it, but never got the opportunity to do it. I may yet go back to that, but we'll see. However, fundamentally, one of the things is that this actual aircraft was the subject aircraft that they used for all the 3D modelling and the development, etc. But what they actually did in terms of the flight dynamics is quite important, really. Basically, these things are available as kit aircraft, microlights, so they're up to, I think it's 472 kilos in maximum takeoff weight, something like that. But basically you can fly them on a relatively low level license. So in the UK that's the NPPL, the National Private Pilot's License, which has a lower set of hours than a normal private pilot's license, but you're more restricted in what you can do. So you can't fly over the channel to Europe, for example, on a UK national private pilot's license. And it also has to be things like a simple single-engined aircraft, so you can't have complex aircraft, etc. But this is about as simple as it gets. But one of the things it has is, because it's a kit-built aircraft, they have to be test flown and authorised, in effect, as certified for flight is the better way of putting it, by certain qualified individuals who are test pilots or factory pilots. And one of the things that I've found out is that when they developed this, or when they built this for FSX and P3D, one of the things they did was they actually got a factory test pilot to fly it and to verify the handling qualities and the performance. So literally it's almost as if Sim720 built a kit, put it together, and then the factory test pilot came along and said, actually, you know what, this is right, this is right, this is right, you need to fix that. So it's got a price of, I think it's still £25, it always used to be, which I know some people have sort of gone, well, that's a bit steep and a bit expensive, but sometimes in the background you need to be mindful of what the developers have done in terms of their costs and their efforts to make something as good as they can. So it was originally designed for FSX. The texturing in P3D, there's areas where it could have been a little bit better, and there's areas such as the radios where it's a bit sort of, it's still in the world of P3D FSX, but actually I think it's a very pretty little thing, and it's a lot of fun to fly, particularly in weather like this. A 20-knot crosswind is going to be a little bit sporty, but we will have to see how we get on with that. I think it's literally just straight across the runway. There is a short runway which we may use for landing later if we get trouble. But what we'll do is we'll start taxiing out, and we'll see how we get on. So the first part of the video, as I alluded to, is more about me than anything else. There's been quite a lot of people saying very nice comments in my last video because of my return to making videos. In essence, I used to make a lot more videos than I have been recently, and in fact I haven't made any really for the last year. The reason for that is as follows. I like that. That's nice, going over the different tarmacs. We had a bit of a bump there. The reason for the absence, so to speak, is down to my health more than anything else. And fundamentally, 7.5 years ago now it is, I was qualified to fly commercial airliners, albeit I wasn't flying them. I didn't have a job at the time to fly them. I was working in the police. But 7.5 years ago I was diagnosed with a low-grade brain tumour. Bit of a bummer. Not really what you want to hear when you've just spent 35 grand on your on your commercial pilot's licenses and your airline transport pilot's licenses. But you know, such things are sent to triers, and you just get on. So fundamentally, that's one of the reasons why I ended up starting the channel, was to move across from real-world aviation into flight simming, and to try and sort of keep a bit of what I was doing alive in many respects. Now, unfortunately, the tumour is incurable, but it was sat there dormant, not really doing anything, so we were quite happy to leave it be, because the impact on my life in terms of quality of life would have been horrendous because of it being in the visual area of the brain. So fast forward 6.5 years to last summer, and fundamentally what then happened was there was a change. It became more aggressive, it changed type, and in consultation with the medical teams, we decided that the best thing to do was to whip it out, get the bad boy gone, and consequently after that we've got a very strong crosswind from the right here, 20 knots, and we're only in a 450 odd kilo aircraft, so you can expect to see it will want to weathercock into the wind on the right, which it's doing at the moment, and then we'll get a little bit of sideways behaviour, scrub it off and get airborne. Not exactly the prettiest thing. The flaps do have a very significant impact on your lift and your pitch, but you can see we're canted off nearly 45 degrees just to maintain the centre line, so the landing's going to be a little bit interesting. We're climbing like a rocket at the minute because there's only one of us in the aircraft. So going back to where we were and where we're at, fundamentally what has subsequently happened is we had the bad boy whipped out, and then we went through nearly 2 months of radiotherapy, and I'm currently 6 months through 9 months worth of chemotherapy. So you can understand that obviously the last year has been a somewhat challenging year, is the best way of describing it. I'm just going to get myself a little bit more ground clearance before we turn. It's going to be the most awful circuit you'll ever have seen as well, because the wind is horrendous, but we'll see how we get on. So we'll start to turn crosswind now. Plenty of rudder, and we'll come round. So yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting period, I have to say. 5320 really is the heading we're looking for. So it's been an interesting year, it has to be said. I'm not going to spend too long on this heading because the wind is going to take us absolutely roaring away. One of the things we are going to do is we're going to have to visually assess how much we cant into the wind, so that it doesn't just blow us off the side of the map. So yeah, it's been a somewhat interesting year. There's been a few challenges in there. Now, as if that weren't bad enough, the problem is the tumour was in the visual part of the brain. So consequently, there's two sorts of tumours really. One is, if you like, almost like an egg in jelly. It's the kind where the tumour isn't interwoven or intermingled with the tissue that is around it. We are drifting in a bit too much, which is a surprise. Considering the wind is 20 knots from our left. As I say, the actual landing's going to be a bit sporty, but you can see how much we're drifting to the right just looking at that. But yeah, the two sorts of tumours, one if you like is almost like an egg in jelly. So if you imagine you have a solid mass, but there's a clear boundary, a clear line surrounds that compared to the surrounding tissue. So with that you can kind of go in and remove the tumour, and all things being good, you've got most of what you need out of the area. Unfortunately, the other sort of tumour is what I had, which is where it's kind of like interwoven. So although there's clear defined areas visible on a scan, it's interwoven with good healthy cells, and unfortunately that's where we were at. So although we've had the thing taken out, which is great, we've also had to go through the radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and it will reappear. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed to reappear, unfortunately, which is a shame, but that's how things go. Let's get some first stage of flap down. See how we're going. But consequently what that means is that things like driving have gone, and pilot's licenses have gone, etc. Now one of the difficulties is that the driving license has gone permanently, and the reason for that is because the tumour was in the visual part of the brain. What's now happened is it's had a very significant effect on my vision. Funny old thing. And it means that if you were to look at your monitor and draw a line down the middle, I can't see the right hand side. I have absolutely no vision to the right of centre line. So as you can imagine, that starts to cause a few issues in terms of everything from reading and writing again to, you know, simple things, watching TV, and you know, the impact that that sort of thing has is rather significant. So I'm actually technically now registered sight impaired, so visually impaired, sight impaired, however you want to term it. But it's introduced a few challenges, and consequently obviously things like making videos, flying simulators, etc. Aren't necessarily as easy as they once were. We're going to turn final. We are high, but what I'm trying to do is I'll keep the speed up so that we have some energy to try and control the aircraft as we come in. You can see that in effect we're now, because we're starting to slow down, the wind is taking a much greater effect than it was, and actually we're going to end up almost at 45 degrees, because as we slow down, and I am going to try and keep some speed on as late as I can, as we slow down we're going to find that we push the boundaries of what our safe landing is going to be. That's great, isn't it? Just when you want to be able to see the runway. A little bit high, but I'm happy with that. The speed's higher than I would normally do. I think in the regulations there's something like the stall speed for these things on full flap has to be less than 35 knots. It's ridiculous. So it's almost like a helicopter with wings, and yeah, really fun thing to fly. I mean, if you want to have a fun thing to mess around with, try something like this, and then try and get it into the smallest strips you can. Try and kick it straight, but we haven't got much control authority. Ah! Try and not run off the... This is where the ground friction, unfortunately, in FSX isn't at its greatest. So yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. It means that unfortunately there are some challenges that I will still face in future, but one of the things I'm determined to do is to keep simming and to keep making videos. Which leads me on nicely to what's going to happen with the channel. Well, the channel's still here, it's still up. Since I posted my last video, I've had a lot of very nice remarks, and a lot of very good support, for which I thank you guys tremendously. It's awesome. I mean, when a group of people can be quite so supportive, it's a very humbling experience, is the best way of describing it. However, one of my passions is trying to keep this channel up to date, well informed in terms of what's going on in terms of current aircraft out there, etc. So I did the review on the Fokker F50, and I did have a comment saying, why on earth was I reviewing that? Well, there's a lot to talk about, and not every add-on or every aircraft is something where you're going to have everything as positive. You know, even some of the complex aircraft have elements where it's not so positive. However, you know, these things are a good talking point for us in many respects. Got some bearings on where we are. Yeah, we're fairly rocketing at the minute. So let's turn in now. And you know, all things considered, we've got an interesting period now for the channel in terms of what happens next. Now, as a result of everything that's been going on, obviously I've still got treatment going on at the moment, so we've still got shall we say, a little bit of rehabilitation to work on, and a few bits and bobs. So I may not be as prodigious as I would want in terms of the number of videos that I will be able to produce. The other thing is that what I want to do is potentially have a broader range of subjects covered, so maybe doing a couple of tutorials again, maybe doing some reviews, and possibly also branching out into a couple of other simulators, so Aerofly FS2 or whatever it is, I think one of them's called. There's another one which looks interesting, which is a sort of backwards flying, sort of bush flying type sim that's due out shortly. So things like that maybe to look at. If you guys have got anything particular that you'd like me to look at, then please feel free to let me know. However, obviously this stuff comes out my own pocket, so I may not be able to either afford it or do it there and then if I can afford it. However, I'm open to suggestions and ideas. So really the future for the channel is that it is going to keep going in one way, shape or form. I am going to still keep doing things like aircraft reviews, add-on reviews, and I am going to still keep doing tutorials within all of that. The platform that I do it on may vary, so I might do something in regards to DCS, for example, or I might do something in regards to X-Plane or FSX P3D, as I have been doing for the majority. But the key thing really for me is going to be to keep moving it around, to making it interesting. The last thing I want to do is to end up in a position where it's just churning the same old thing out. And for me, it's important not to do that, because what we want to do is we want to actually make sure that our hobby, our pastime, reflects, you know, the changing times and the changing trends that we have in the hobby, and they are there. I mean, you know, Flight Sim World for whatever reason didn't work out. It's a shame because you know, we need the 64-bit element of Sims, and at the moment, yes, we've got P3D version 4 and X-Plane 11, but it's still something where, in effect, certainly with P3D, you would argue that the market leader, other than being continually upgraded, is still fundamentally the same old sim. Look at this, we're almost hovering. Actually, do you know what, let's have a bit of fun with this. We've got the flaps down and we've got, I think it's a 20 knot headwind, but it might be slightly higher. So let's see just what we can do. Because obviously our stall speed with full flaps, which is what we've got, is going to be down around 35 knots, possibly even less. Look at that. You know what, I've had an idea. We're going to do something very, very different. I think ATC would get very upset with this. We're just going to go fly over the terminal. At the end of the day, this is simulation. This is the kind of thing we can do. And I'm hunting for ideas, actually, guys, in terms of something to do as a little competitive challenge. For those of you who haven't seen it, I set a challenge up to try and do takeoff and landings at 5 airfields in a row at the Frisian Islands, to do it as a time trial to see how quickly it could be done, and it worked out really well. So if you guys have got any ideas for any little sort of competitions that can be done in a couple of minutes. The other one that I participated in was trying to fly one of the tutorial routes in the Robinson R22 as quickly as could be flown. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can land on the width of the runway. So we're going to see if we can bring it down and land on the width of the runway, because we've got such a bad crosswind. It seems to me to make sense to just use the runway in the way that actually we've got the best into-wind landing. It's going to be tough, this is. Why am I doing this again? So yeah, we'll just make the rules up on the spot. I've got to land on the tarmac. I can't land anywhere else, can't land on the grass, and I can't roll off the other side. And I can't obviously crash. Oh, do we reckon that counts? Yes! I'll take that. That's still on the runway. Look at that. So there we have it, guys. I know it's a bit rough and ready. It's a little bit of an update about me and my health, a little bit of an update about what I'm going to try and do with the channel, which is basically get back into doing some more videos. We might try the occasional challenge thing, so this has turned out to be quite an interesting challenge, and I might actually set it up as a challenge, I think, but we'll see how we get on. And ultimately, I do have a couple of things in the pipeline, one of which is I've got the Ultimate A320 or the A320 Ultimate, I should say, for X-Plane 11, which I'm currently messing around with at the moment. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, because I'm considering doing a tutorial as well as a review on it. But there we go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I do apologise for the absence of videos over the last year or so, but obviously I'm sure you understand, and hopefully hear from you guys soon, and take care.